Started. So welcome to our MLB, FHA manual and renovation webinar. Today I'm gonna present the renovation webinar, but as I go through the webinar, I'm gonna touch on the credit file itself, mainly when it pertains to a manual underwrite. Not gonna go into too much before the PowerPoint, but I just wanna make an overall statement about that piece about manuals or just FHA in general when it comes to your standard 203B versus your renovation. Hi, Steve. How's it going? I see you joined. Hey, Robert, Francisco, and David. So a lot of people, one of the biggest questions I get is what's the difference between your renovations and your 203B in terms of DTI, LTV, things like that. Your credit file as a whole is no different on a renovation versus your standard 203B. So when you're looking at a manual underwrite, let's say from a DTI standpoint with FHA, your max DTI is 40 over 50 for a 203B file. Therefore, on a 203K renovation loan, it's the same. So, that just gives you a little bit of a background on that. So when you're talking LTVs, DTIs, how is the credit going to be analyzed? How is the appraisal analyzed? It's all the same, regardless if you're doing a standard 203B or a 203K. So keep that in mind as we go through this PowerPoint. And I'll touch on some of those as we go on. And for those of you that have not been in my webinars, I like to keep them a little less formal. So please feel free to just unmute yourself, ask any questions that you have as we go along. I'd rather be able to give you that answer when you have the question right then and there. And in the chat, if you need any information, you'll see my information is in the chat, as well as my partner, Ashley Scarfy. She's usually with us on our video. She's having some technical difficulties, but she is here with us today. So let's get started. 203K renovation. What is a 203K renovation? So it's a very basic question. And, I do get that question a lot because, back people that have been in the industry for a while, a 203K renovation 20, 30 years ago was just to do some basic repairs to get the appraisal to an as-is appraisal report. Then as time progressed, they started adding more features to the renovation product to where it is today. And if just to summarize what you could do with a 203K loan, depending if you take a limited or a standard, you can literally tear a house down to its foundation, as long as you leave the foundation, and build it up. So there's really no limitation to what you can do when it comes to a 203K. There is no limitation on how much you can borrow on the standard side. There are some limitations on the limited side, and we'll go through those. But you can do anything. The world is the borrower's oyster when it comes to what could they do to the house. Recently, I was approached by someone, a borrower has a special needs child, and they have to build build certain rooms to the needs of the child, certain sensory type features and things like that. Absolutely. There is no limitations. You can put elevators in your homes if the borrower's lucky enough to have a home that needs an elevator. So keep that in mind when you think renovation. There is really no limitation on the actual structure of the home. With your renovations, they are available for purchase and rate and term refi only. Although I'm touching on FHA today, I'll throw a few little tidbits about your VA and your Fannie Mae. The purchase and rate and term only applies to all renovation products. So no renovation product will allow the borrower to take additional cash out for debt consolidation, for savings, things like that. So it's just solely to do renovations on the house. 203K does have two different types of renovation. So you have your limited and you have your standard. And we're going to go into what each one will permit. That one will be a little bit less paperwork, I guess, would be the best way to put it. And the other one that requires just a few extra documents is the one that you pretty much can do whatever you want to the home. This slide, which, by the way, you will be getting this presentation after the webinar. So you'll get everything that we're going through. I find it very boring to read off the webinar. So there might be some stuff on the screen that you want to spend a little more time on. So you'll be able to do that when we send the PowerPoint to you. But why use the renovation loan? I think one of the biggest things that I like about the renovation loan is the world we're living in today. And Steve, you and I just talked about this. The supply is very limited out there still. And, there are people that are finding homes in areas that they really want to be in that area. They like the school district, whatever the reason may be, but either there's limitation on the homes or the homes are not really to what they want them to be. That is one of the best uses of a renovation in today's world. Other than your obvious, I need to fix a roof or I just want to upgrade my kitchen. It's if a borrower is trying to buy a home, there's still a limited market. And this actually opens up, doubles the market because now they can go for any home they want, whether it's visually appealing, and they can make it to the way they want it with a renovation loan. When it comes to FHA and VA specifically, you can do quite a bit. VA is where you have a little bit more limitation, and I'll touch on that when I get to that portion of the PowerPoint. Here's a list of benefits. One of the biggest benefits that I find with this product is community revitalization. I think everyone on this webinar, no matter where you've lived, whether it be now or previously, there's always an area in your town or surrounding or somewhere around your town where it's not as built up or maybe can use a little revitalization. This has helped so many communities build up. When you have multiple people in a community utilize something like a renovation product to build to make the home more appealing, and that helps the area, helps home values, and helps bring more people in. So that's a really great perk of the 203K renovation. And of course, it allows you to finance the repairs as opposed to a construction loan or as opposed to taking hard money, which is higher interest rates, or using your own cash. This is a way to get a really good interest rate, consolidate it all with your purchase or refinance, and not have to worry about the large expenses of renovations. On your eligibility, this is an MLB overlay. I hate the word. I feel like an overlay is it's not four letters, but it's a 7-letter word or 4-letter word. But this is more of an industry standard thing. FICO scores. FICO scores is an industry standard overlay that you may see some limitations on manual underwrites or things like that. With us for FHA 203K, your minimum FICO score is 580. Don't get that confused with our standard 203B product. When it's not renovation, we will go as low as FHA allows, which is 500. I'll tell you, pricing at 500 FICO is not the prettiest, but you can do it. So if you do have the lower FICOs that are not renovation, we can do that. But for your FHA renovation, it's 580. For your VA renovation, it is 600. And for your Fannie Mae renovation, as low as you can get a DU approve eligible. So this slide, it's kind of moot because I've already told you there's no difference between a 203B and a 203K. So you can do a log home, you can do a condo, single unit condo, modular home, stick built. You could do any type of manufactured home. That's a big one that's coming out a lot now. You can do anything on a renovation when it comes to the style of the property as you could on your standard 203B. And at least with MLB, we don't have overlays. So if you're working with a lender that has no overlays, then you'll know that there's really not too many home styles that do not permit or you're not permitted to use with the product. So with that said, you can do this with a 1 to 4 unit home. Of course, with your minimum FICO of 580, and the minimum repairs is 5,000. Anything under 5,000, always talk to your lender about maybe an escrow holdback, because something as small as $2,000, $3,000 to go through the renovation process. Although it is just as quick as a standard loan, I've closed these in 15 days. It's just easier, perhaps, for the borrower to go an escrow holdback when you're only looking about a couple of $1,000s. Of course, if the guidelines on your renovation match your 203B loans, your limitations are your FHA county limits. That doesn't change. On your purchase, you can lend up to 96.5%, and on your refi, rate and term refi, 97.75%. See, no different. So this is where it gets interesting. We're going to go into the 2 different types of renovation. So the first one, we're going to go limited, and then the second one, it's called a standard. So when I talk about the limited, I always try to repeatedly say the word limited because this program is exactly what's in the title. It is limited. You're limited in the amount you could borrow. You're limited in the type of repairs you can do. You're limited in the number of contractors you can use. You're limited in the number of draws. So it's a limitation in case you're ever wondering or trying to remember which one is the one where I can't go over a certain amount or I can't do certain repairs. You're limited. That's the program. You're the limited. So the limited 203K, it's to facilitate non-structural repairs. So like a roof repair, or if they want to upgrade a kitchen, a bathroom. And why is that? Because you're limited to $75,000. Now you want to be careful because that $75,000 includes your bid, which is your repair amount, but also the repair costs. So, after closing is when the work begins, and depending on how many phases there are, there are going to be post-closing inspections, up to two, because you have two draws. There is going to be a title update fee once the work is completed. The work that your borrower wants to do may require a permit. So those are fees, and all of this is financeable. But all of these fees, including your bid, can't exceed 75,000. Now, what if you go over 75? That's okay. If you go over 75,000, that's just going to kick you into the standard. And one of the bigger differences between a limited and a standard is you do need a HUD consultant on a standard. You do not need one on a limited. But I highly encourage anybody I talk to, and again, I'll bring up Steve because we've talked about it recently. If we have not talked about it, Steve, it is highly recommended to get a HUD consultant. A HUD consultant technically represents the lender, but really represents the borrower. The HUD consultant is there to make sure the work is being done properly in a workmanship-like manner. The HUD consultant manages the project to make sure the right materials are being used, and they make sure that it's done timely because you are limited to the amount of time that you have to get the work done with this particular program. So even though it's not needed, I highly recommend it. And up to $75,000, the HUD consultant fee is no more than $800, and it is financeable. In the link, Ashley's going to include the HUD consultant link, where if you want to search for a HUD consultant in your area, you'll get a list of HUD consultants. There are some that will want payment up front. I saw recently a couple of HUD consultants, they want half up front and they finance the rest. And there are HUD consultants that will allow the whole kit and caboodle to be financed. So if you get a HUD consultant like that, then everything is financed. So the borrower's coming out of pocket for nothing. Because it's limited, you're limited to 3 contractors. Now, this is technically an overlay. But this is an industry standard overlay of 3 standard contractors. Now, we did have a loan where we needed a 4th contractor, and it made sense. We escalated it to our review board, and they decided that a 4th contractor was acceptable, and we allowed it. So this is a guideline. It's not a rule. If you ever do have a job where it requires more than 3 contractors, reach out to me, reach out to your AE, and we'll see if we can work with you on that. To give you an example, I just spoke to someone last week. He was doing a driveway, a roof, a septic repair, and needed to do some paint work. These are 4 different specialty people. The roofer is not going to do the paint job. The driveway guy is not doing the roof, right? The septic guy is certainly not going to do the roof. So like each person was specialized, not doing another person's job. So it did require 4 separate people. And in that case, we did approve that 4th individual. So you have 3 contractors, but because it's a limited program, you're limited to 2 draws. So I'm going to break down what happens on a renovation loan. You go through your loan process, your credit's reviewed, you get all your income documents. We, as the lender, are going to get all the contractor documents because that's what we're going to do for you as a partner. We're going to work with you on that. And then the loan closes and funds. That is the day the work begins. After the loan closes, you have 30 days to start your work. Once the work begins, and we'll use a kitchen as an example. I always point behind me because my kitchen's behind me. So we'll say we're going to do a rehab to our kitchen, and we're going to do it in 2. We have 2 draws, 2 phases. So phase 1 would be demolitioning the kitchen. You're going to take out the cabinetry, take out the stove, take your sink out, get all of that out, remove all the debris. Now an inspector comes in, make sure all the debris is removed, everything's good, and the first draw is released. So you notice the work is being done first, then the first draw is released. Once that draw is released, the second phase begins, which in my example would be installing the cabinets, installing the new stove, and anything else you're doing to the kitchen. Once the kitchen's complete, the inspector comes back in, makes sure everything is done, all the materials that were paid for were used, gives the thumbs up, and the second draw is released. Now, each contractor has 2 draws. So let's just say what we just went through is taking cabinets and your stove out and replacing them. But let's say there's painting that needs to be done or floor work that needs to be done, and that's being done by a separate contractor. That other contractor also can have two phases where phase one's complete, the draw or the check is cut, and then they can finish their second phase of work. Now, a little tidbit: not every lender allows this. We do. If the borrower has prepaid for some materials, right? So let's use wood flooring, for example. That's pretty expensive. It's a few $1,000s, depending on how much you're going to do. And the borrower bought all the wood planks ahead of time. We will reimburse up to 50% of that prepaid material. So using the kitchen as an example, if they've already bought the cabinets, they bought the stove, they bought the flooring, and they spent $10,000, you provide us with those invoices and we'll cut $5,000 at closing. And that money sometimes will help fund that first phase if you're doing a smaller job and the contractor doesn't have the funds to, or all the funds to facilitate that first phase. But depending on your type of job, if you're doing a kitchen upgrade and a bathroom upgrade, these contractors typically or tend to have those reserves available, especially if they're familiar with a renovation loan because they know exactly how it works. So let's go into a little bit about actually before I go into that, are there any questions on the limited? Okay, perfect. And I always like to highlight again that a lot of people confuse like fix and flips or construction loans with renovation loans. The work does commence or begin after the loan closes. The only money we can release is reimbursing up to 50% of the prepaid materials. So it's really important that, like, if you have Bob down the block who has, fixed a few light bulbs for your borrower and that's the person they want to use, you have to be careful because that person may not be able to accommodate working first and then getting that check cut. Something really, really important, and I kind of brushed over it very quickly while I was talking, but when it comes down to the renovation piece, a lot of people veer away from it because they hear in the industry that it takes a long time to close these loans. Yeah, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you're darn right. They would take like 2 months to close. They were a nightmare. But things have changed. Lenders have also opened up to be more accommodating or get more involved in that contractor process where it would fall on you as the loan officer a lot to get the paperwork where, well, not every lender has a concierge desk like we do, but lenders that do have it acknowledge and realize we want you to bring these loans in. I spoke to one or two of you that have an interest in wanting to use this as maybe a niche. It is a great niche, especially when you're pairing with a lender that's going to do 95% of the work for you. And what does that mean? On a limited program, if you're not using a HUD consultant, the only thing you have to do as a loan officer when you're registering the file is upload that bid. That is as far as your job goes for the renovation piece. Now all you have to do is worry about getting the income docs, the asset docs, nothing related to the renovation piece, because we are going to send all the disclosures out to the borrower, all the disclosures out to the contractor. The contractor profile is going to be sent to be completed by the contractor. We're going to reach out to the contractor to get their business license, driver's license, and W-9. So all of that is going to be handled by us. We don't charge for that, of course, because we're partners. We're not doing this for a cost or a profit. We're doing it because we want to make it easier for you. As much as I don't want to say this because I don't like this, but if you don't have a bid when you're registering the file, you can still register a renovation loan. You just have to let us know what an estimate amount of the repairs are going to be, because as that courtesy, we are going to put the loan together for you. We're going to calculate that loan amount. We're going to make sure all the fees are properly added on your loan estimate. So before we even disclose the loan, we're going to send do the LE, make sure you eyeball it, so you could see the loan amount calculation and you'll see all the fees for the renovation costs on that LE. So on the standard, which is the next one we're going to go over, I'm going to tell you to pay attention to what's not eligible of a repair. On the limited, because it's limited, pay attention to the eligible repairs. And again, you're going to get this PowerPoint, so I'm not going to go through them one at a time. But your eligible repairs are non-structural repairs, right? So let's just say there's a wall in the middle of it. You have 2 rooms. You want to knock this wall down. That's all you want to do. Let's say that costs $10,000. Just knock a wall down. That seems very limited, right? But if it's a load bearing wall, that is structural work and that would not fall under the limited. So you have to be careful on what kind of work you want to do. We recently had a porch that somebody wanted to just tear the porch down and build a nicer porch. In order to do that, two of the beams that were on the edge of the porch, they were load bearing beams that kicked it directly into a standard. I mean, the porch was only about $25,000 plus repair costs, so it was well within the limited limits of 75,000. However, those two beams that were being taken down and replaced were structural, so we had to move it to a standard, which does require a HUD consultant. So, if you're not sure, please reach out to me or your AE will eyeball that bid to see which way you're going to go, limited or standard. Of course, if it's over 75,000, you're automatically going to be standard. For your ineligible repairs, it's structural repairs, room additions, repairs that require architectural exhibits, any landscaping, site amenities, and any repair that's going to displace the homeowner for more than 30 days. Now, one bullet point to really point out is the fourth one, the landscaping, site amenity improvements. Earlier, I said you can tear a house down to its foundation and do whatever you want to do to the main structure. So always remember that. If it pertains to the house or anything attached to the house, you're good. If it's detached to the house, that's where you want to find out, can I do this? Because that's where you'll have limitations, regardless if it's the limited or the standard. So you always want to reach out about that. On this slide right here, it pretty much recaps what we talked about. And we put this slide in the PowerPoint for you in case you want to present to your realtors or you want to just give a quick synopsis of the program to your business partners. This pretty much wraps it up in a nutshell. Tells you the kind of work you can do, gives you a little overview of how to calculate it, what you can and can't do in terms of repair, the length of period you have for that repair, and it does go into giving 50% of the prepaid materials. So it goes into a whole recap of it. So we put this in here for you if you just wanted to take like a one-pager to give to someone to give them an overall synopsis of the limited program. And again, you'll have this PowerPoint at the end of this presentation. Before I go to standard, just want to make sure, any questions, remember, unmute yourself, ask away. All right, standard 203K. This is my favorite because this is where you could do whatever you want. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Standard 203K. You could do whatever you want on the structure of the home. Robert, you have a question.
Yes, ma'am. I thought that with the 203Ks that they could not do any type of repairs to pools or add to the pool.
Right, that is correct. And I'll just go back here. Any site amenity improvements. That's correct. Now, and actually, well, it's jumping like one or two slides, but I will go there just to show you right here. So on the standard program, you can't install a pool. You can't install an outdoor kitchen, a tennis court, a gazebo, a spa. No, you can't. But you can fix one. So if there's a borrower's buying a home and there's a pool, there's a crack maybe in the lining or the pump is not working, you can fix any of the components of that pool. You just can't install a brand new pool.
So if it's there, then it can be repaired, but if it's not there, you cannot add it all.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
But I'm going to confuse you now, Robert, because on the Fannie Mae home style, you can. So always ask, always call and ask if you have something that, you believe you can't do. You might not be able to do it for this one, but for another renovation product, you might be able to. So a pool you can install on the Fannie Mae home style, you can't on the FHA. So on the standard 203K, the world is yours. You can do whatever you want to the home. And like Robert was saying, that's probably why Robert raised his hand, because I said you could do whatever you want to the main structure. And I want to throw in here, which is not in this PowerPoint, and we're going to work on adding this because this is it's not new, maybe about a year, but it's fairly new that HUD now allows us to build accessory dwelling units, ADUs, which is huge because you can use some of the income from that ADU to qualify. The caveat is the ADU, however, has to be attached to the main structure. So if you have a borrower looking to build an ADU in the detached garage, that we can't do. But if it's an attached garage or they want to build an ADU attached to the home, they can do that. Now, if an ADU already exists and they just want to fix that ADU, they can do that. They just can't build a brand new one unless it's attached to the home. So there's so much you can do. But with the standard, you do require that HUD consultant. Again, the link's in the chat. You just click on that link, you put in like 2 pieces of information, and you get a whole list of HUD consultants in the area. And I highly recommend calling more than one until you find the one that you feel, oh, I'm sorry, the borrower feels most comfortable with, and that maybe they will allow the borrower to finance the whole fee. If the borrower wants to pay it out of pocket, that's fine. But if they want to finance it, you have the option of calling as many HUD consultants as you want until you find one that will allow it to be financed. One of my favorite pieces of this product is the fourth bullet point. If the home is not habitable, the borrower can finance up to 12 months of their mortgage payments. So let's go the most exaggerated example. The borrower is going to tear the house down. Tear it down to the foundation. Remember, you can't touch that foundation. Let me rephrase. You can't take away from the foundation. You can add to it. You can't take away from it. So if we knock a house down, we're not going to expect the borrower to like pitch a tent on top of the foundation and live on the foundation, right? And the borrower is certainly going to have trouble paying for a hotel or an Airbnb while also making the mortgage payment on a home they can't live in. So the HUD consultant is going to review the bid, look at the whole rundown of work, and determine how long will that home not be habitable. I mean, you're looking at months. If you're tearing a house down, if you're doing a gut rehab, if you have a house with one bathroom and they want to redo that bathroom and it's an extensive work, there's going to be time that they're not going to be able to live in the home. You need a bathroom. You need a functioning bathroom, right? So it could be up to 12 months because that's how long you have on a standard 203K. You have 12 months to complete a project. Just as a side note, it used to be 6 months. So HUD just recently, back in November, or oh my gosh, we're already almost in November again, almost a year ago, they changed it from 6 months to 12 months. So that was huge. And I suspect that had something to do with COVID. Supply and demand was very, short, as we all know, and materials were taking longer to get. So the projects were taking longer to do. So I suspect this is as a result of COVID, but hey, it's in our favor. So I don't complain. Unlike in the limited side, where you're limited to 3 contractors, on the standard side, you get 1 general contractor, and then that general contractor will get as many subcontractors as needed to do the job. Again, using the exaggerated example, if you're doing a gut rehab or tearing a house down, you're going to need a plumber, an electrician, a painter, maybe the guy who does the flooring doesn't do anything else, a roofer. You're going to need a whole bunch of different people that may or may not be able to, do multiple parts of that project. So there's no limitation on the subcontractors. And just to ease your mind as the loan officer when it comes to time frame, we only vet out the general contractor. We're not vetting every single subcontractor. So when we do the vetting, we only ask the general contractors, W-9 and license and all that stuff. So that definitely saves time. Unlike on the limited side, where you only have 2 draws, on the standard you have 5. Again, going back to the tear down or gut rehab. There's going to be plenty of phases, right? Tearing a house down is phase 1. There's one of your 5 phases out the window to tear the house down. Once the house is torn down, that HUD consultant, not inspector, because when you're using a HUD consultant, they come out and do the phase inspections. HUD consultant comes out, makes sure the house was torn down, all debris removed, gives the thumbs up, cuts the first check. Second phase, building the shell of the house. Once that's done, HUD consultant comes out and so forth, confirms it, cuts a check. Third phase, building the rooms out, right? Maybe even installing the levels for your cabinetry. That's phase 3. You get your check. Phase 4 is filling those rooms up. And phase 5 may be your final touch-ups, paint, and stuff like that. So you have your 5 phases of work and 5 draws that will be cut. The 5th draw will obviously be the ultimate final inspection where the house is completed. Most likely borrower's already moved in, and now the house is theirs and the job is complete. So like I said, on the limited, pay attention to what is eligible. On a standard, let's take a look at what's not eligible. And we kind of had a sneak peek a few minutes ago. This is what's not eligible. Pretty much anything that's detached from the property. So here's another great example, one of my favorites. Someone bought a house recently and the home was built back in the early 1800s. And my brother actually had one like this. So I had the pleasure of experiencing push button electricity. Not, you and I are used to flipping a switch up, flipping a switch down, or maybe sliders, whatever you have. These were literally you push the top button, it turns it on, bottom button turns it off. The homeowner wanted to replace it and upgrade it, rightfully so. Also had to upgrade the fuse box because it was very, very old. So yeah, we were able to do that. So very unique stuff. I talked about that special needs child where they had to do some upgrades to the home for sensory and things like that. Elevators, you can put chairs along your stairs for the disabled. There's anything to the main structure you can do. There's no limitations. You can do solar panels. So, that's an EEM, an energy efficient mortgage. So there's lots you can do, no limitations. The limitations, like Robert was mentioning, are the separate items, which we gave you some nice pictures here. If your borrower's, lucky enough to afford an outside spa, unfortunately, we can't do that through the renovation. Outside kitchens, tennis courts, gazebos, pools, things like that cannot be financed through a renovation loan. Believe it or not, up until a few years ago, a fence used to be considered a luxury item. They finally removed that as a luxury item, and you can put a fence around your house. I can't imagine why they think a fence is luxury. I call that a safety item, but they called it luxury. Like on the limited, we have this slide here for you. So this way, if you want to present it to your realtors or business partners, this gives you a nice summary of what we talked about, time frame, what you can't do, and just a little breakdown of how to put the loan together. I'm sorry, how to calculate the loan amount. So this is and I'm just going to scroll real fast so you can see, and then I'll go backwards here. This right here is what's called a maximum mortgage worksheet. We put these in steps here. So you can see this is step one. Right up here, it says step one. And then here's step two. This is on a purchase. This is on a refinance, step two. And it's like a long legal page sized worksheet. And this comes out of the system, and it really, you plug in a few numbers and then the system does all this automated calculation. So you do not have to worry about any of this. The only one I really would pay attention to is this very first one here, because you want to make sure whether or not you are within that limited $75,000. The best way to gauge it is if your bid itself is greater than $66,000, you might not be able to go limited. And the biggest reason is letter B, which is your contingency reserve. So let's go down that line by line so you can see why, if your bid's over that, you might go over 75,000. So first, in step A, letter A, number one, cost of construction, that's your bid, right? So you would put your bid amount there. Then you have your inspection fee. So on a limited, you have 2 phases, 2 draws, 2 inspections. Each inspection fee is $350. So let's say you have 2 inspections. That's $700 right there. Then you're going to have a title update. That takes place at the very end when the house or work is complete. That's $325. So right there, you're just over $1,000. If the job number 4 requires permits, you got to put that there too. And that might actually be built into the bid. If it is, we just separate it out, but you don't have to when you're trying to calculate it. If it's clumped into the bid, you can leave it in number 1. Letter B is your financeable contingency reserve. Now, let's say you're doing a bathroom upgrade. Okay, the home closes, it's funded, where everything's good. The contractor comes in to start the work. Now, remember, we already gave the money. It's already in the loan. There's nothing extra. He breaks the wall down and there's a leak in the pipe. Where's the money going to come from for that leak in the pipe? The appraiser certainly didn't know about that leak. The seller may not have known about it. The borrower probably doesn't know about it. So where's the money going to come from to fix that pipe? That's what the contingency reserve is for. It's for unforeseeable events or unforeseeable repairs that were not part of the bid and were not part of the calculation. So the best way for you to know what it's going to be, they do say it goes up to 20%. I've never seen it 20%. It's either 10 or 15%. So you take your bid and you multiply it by 10 or 15%. It's 10% if you're not shutting down utilities. It's 15% if any of the work requires you to shut down repair, upgrade, do anything to your utilities. So if there's plumbing involved, you got to shut that water off in order to fix a pipe or replace a sink. Maybe you're upgrading some plumbing work. That's going to be a 15% contingency. So let's get our trusty calculator out. If your bid is let's go lower. $67,500 is your bid. If there's a 15% contingency, that you're already over $75,000. You're at $77,625. So you got to be really careful with that contingency reserve. And I have seen many limiteds when the bids are that high kick over to a standard because of that reserve. There's no wiggle room on it. We can't cut it down or make it smaller. So, you have to be careful. Now, one of the biggest questions I get is, what if you don't use any of it, or you use part of the contingency reserve? Whatever's left over goes towards principal reduction. Because remember, you can't get cash out on these loans, and the loan's already closed. So there's no way to adjust the loan amount. So it goes directly into the principal reduction. So it does go back to the borrower, just in the form of equity. The last fee that you also want to keep in mind when you're doing your calculation is letter C number 1. It's called a supplemental origination fee. It's in the handbook. They require that we charge it. It's the greater of $350 or 1.5% of Section A and B, which is your bid, your inspection, title fees, permits, and contingency reserve. 95% of the time, unless your work is under $15,000, it's going to be 1.5%. So if you're looking at, let's say, a $65,000 bid at 1.5%, that's $975. That will be financed in with all the other repair costs. Now I can go to this screen here, which is on a standard, and I'm not going to do that because really it's the same exact thing what we just talked about, except there's no limitation on how much you could borrow. You don't have to worry about it. This one, however, will help you get a little bit more nailed down on your loan amount calculation, because it goes into if you have an architectural or engineer fee, if you're using a HUD consultant on a standard, so that's financeable. If a feasibility study is necessary, that's financeable. And of course, the HUD consultant determines how long will the home not be habitable. You finance your mortgage payments right here. So, but it's the same calculation and math. But this really is the limited one that you really, really want to use if you're looking to stay within that limited program. That's the one that I see people have trick, unless you're just doing a roof. Not many roofs are going to kick you over $75,000. So, little minor things like roof repairs or, upgrading a bathroom. That would be a lot of money to upgrade a bathroom for $75,000. So little minor cosmetic things like painting, replacing your flooring. That's what really limited is for. Anything a little bit more major than that, it's going to kick you to standard. I'm just skipping the other parts. The max mortgage worksheet, that will put you to sleep, because it's a whole bunch of steps and auto calculations the system does that you don't have to worry about. So this goes a little bit into the HUD consultant and what they do. So this says paid at the time of service by the borrower, or it can be financeable. And like I said, the link's in the chat. You can reach out. There's plenty of HUD consultants that will finance the fee. You just got to find them. I said this earlier, I am seeing a lot of HUD consultants taking half up front and financing the other half. But on a limited, highly recommending it, you're looking at about $800 because they're on a schedule. They can't just charge $5,000 just because they feel like it. They're on an actual schedule, and I'll show you that shortly. Just right here. So up to $1,000 for the HUD consultant fee if the repairs are equal to $50,000, up to $1,200 for repairs between $50,000 and $85,000. So I said 800 because that was, and I apologize, that was the old HUD consultant cost schedule. They did revise that recently. But I really don't see over at 1,000, let alone over 1,000 on a limited program. But if you're doing major work, like I just went over something with somebody the other day, it was $400,000 of repairs. That will not exceed 1% or $2,000, the lower of the two. So the highest cost is $2,000. That's the highest it'll ever be, no matter how much of the bid or how much work is being done. So it's not exorbitant when you're looking at major work, like not knocking a house down or gut rehab. This slide just goes into the draw process that we talked about. So again, this slide here is if you want to present, or you just want to take a few of the slides to give to your realtors or business partners. This is a good slide too. It kind of gives a little synopsis of that. Another little slide for you. This goes into the concierge desk, right? But it does give you the steps of what we're going to go through, right? We handle all the communication with the contractor. We're going to collect all of his licenses, business license, driver's license, insurance, and W-9. That's it. That's all we're going to ask of that contractor. So, you want to make sure, let the borrower know, or if you happen to be in communication with the contractor, let them know it's only a few things. And the contractor is going to be the only person that is going to hold you up, because we all here are familiar with a regular loan process. Take the renovation piece out. You can get those done in 15 days, as long as your appraisal gets done timely and you can get the title done timely, right? But let's say average 21 to 28 days, 3 to 4 weeks, start to finish. That's a renovation loan, as long as the contractor answers us and sends us the docs. So just make sure you prepare them that we're going to reach out to send them whatever disclosure we need, requesting these few documents, and it's very simple. It really is very simple, and I think just the contractors, they get busy on their other jobs, and it could take them a week to respond for just a driver's license. It's silly. So just have the borrower communicate that with the contractor. This here just kind of breaks it down again on what the contractor what we're going to ask from the contractor. Very simple. Here's your business license and valid driver's license. Number 2 is contractor profile. So that's a disclosure we send to the contractor. He fills it out with 3 references or 3 jobs he's done previously, and then his insurance phone number and policy number. So we don't need the real insurance document, just that data or information on the contractor profile. And then the W-9. Now, the general liability insurance and workman's comp, if you're doing a small job like a roof, you may have one roofer. He may not have a team of people. So workman's comp, it would not be required in that situation. And here, lots of people ask me what is needed. This is a list of the disclosures that we send out. Sometimes we're asked, hey, can I get the disclosure package? The disclosures do have specifics of the loan on them, like the bid amount, the contractor name, the purchase price, in some case, depending on the disclosure. So they're specific to the loan. We can't get you the package until the loan's in the system. Then we can generate it. But you don't really need it, because we're going to be sending whatever the borrower needs. We send directly to the borrower, the contractor, and consultant. Any questions? Ask away, whether it be FHA, Fannie, or VA, because those are the 3 renovations. I know I didn't cover the other 2.
You had
Steve?
mentioned there's no limit on the loan, but it does fall within county limits, right?
That's correct.
And also the interest during construction, I'm sure there's some interest. How's that handled? And what is the interest rate?
So, well, the mortgage payment is going to be as norm, right? So the mortgage payments are due, borrower makes the payment unless they finance, right? So there's no difference in the way the loan works post closing. Once the loan closes, you skip a month, the first payment's due the following month.
Okay, so you are paying the mortgage during the construction period, but it can be financed if you wanted it to.
Yeah, well, the HUD consultant is the one who determines how long the house will not be habitable. So just to go back, Steve, on a limited, that mortgage payment option's not there, because you can't do any structural work. So really, there shouldn't be any reason that you would need a mortgage payment. As a matter of fact, in the limited slide, it says you cannot displace the homeowner for more than 30 days, right? So there's a mortgage payment. There's not going to be one due. So on the standard side, that's more major structural stuff that may displace the borrower. In those cases, the HUD consultant will determine, based on the work, okay, this borrower is going to be displaced for at least 6 months. And at that point, it's up to the borrower. They may want to pay it, or they may say, oh, I got to get an Airbnb, or I gotta get a hotel. If they're lucky and they can live with family and finance mortgage payments, that's a beautiful situation.
Okay, got it.
And just to answer the other question about interest rates, they are different. So I just want to prepare everybody. They are not the same as your standard rate. And I'll just give you an example. I priced out, this is for Fannie Mae. Well, actually, no, I did the FHA as well. So for FHA, your standard FHA rate, we'll just go par before you make your comp. Your FHA rates are like 5.5%. Your FHA rehab rate would be 6.25 par. So they are different. And now in this example, or the way we priced today on this scenario, it was a 75 bip difference in rate, that could change. It may not be as exaggerated depending on the day of the rate, but they are at least, I would say, a half a point to a 3/4 point difference or higher. But I tell everybody this, and Steve, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, just tell the borrower, make 6 payments and then we'll refinance them. So it's a temporary situation that they're in that rate. And if they do an FHA or a VA renovation, it's great because we could do a streamlined refinance. There's no appraisal involved. There's no income calculations involved. Nothing. They're very simple. Those get done within your 8-day turn time. Just a little another sales point, to talk to the realtors about that if they don't like the interest rate.
Thank you.
You got it. Any other questions?
So, Andrew, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly. So it's not IO during the construction period and or during the rehab period?
I'm sorry, say that one more time. My dog is trying to interrupt.
It's okay. It's not interest only during the construction or rehab period. It is going to be full payment during the said
That
period.
is correct. Yep,
Okay.
like a standard mortgage.
Yes, ma'am. And then second question I have is this recorded to where you could send this back out to me so I could rewatch it? Because I have been getting bombarded with cell phone calls.
I get it. I know. I would love to do these webinars like 11 o'clock in the morning because we all, right? This is the worst time in the day to dedicate an entire hour to sit here, right? But if I do 11, then the people out in California, so it's hard, so trust me. And I actually thought about moving it to like 1, which is just as hard. I don't know about you, but 1, 2:30, it doesn't really matter. Once it's lunchtime, it's like everybody wakes up and the phone starts ringing. We do have it recorded. It will, I don't believe I have to get it to you because if you go to our YouTube page, you will see it. We post the recordings on our YouTube page, but you're also going to get the PowerPoint as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it. Any other questions? All right, so I'm just going to touch very quick. I'm not going to bring up the PowerPoint because I don't want to confuse everyone by throwing things at you. But in case you do have a VA renovation, they're unique. You don't see them too often, but because I said it, you might now get that phone call. The VA renovation is almost identical to the FHA limited program. 75,000, like it's very, very similar to the, you can't do structural work. You're limited on the amount of time. So, if you do get some call about FHA, VA rehab, and you just don't know too much about it, you can fall back on the FHA limited. There are a couple of differences, but for the most part, they are very similar. The Fannie Mae renovation, very similar, almost identical to the standard FHA, where the only difference is that you cannot knock a house down with Fannie Mae. You can knock the house down with FHA. Fannie allows gut rehab, not a tear down. So it's like each rehab is so similar, but with little nuances and differences. We have lots of flyers, lots of flyers. This, let me share just so I could show everybody in case you haven't perused our website or you're not familiar where it is. I'll quickly show you, and we will personalize these flyers for you. Sorry, I wasn't prepared. I was just kind of throwing this at you. So I'm going to go to my website here, mlbwholesale.com. Then you go to resources, marketing materials. And in here, there's a whole bunch of stuff. We have our elite Fannie Mae, our elite FHA, and VA is coming. I'm so excited. Our first responder program, our knock bridge program. But we have right up here our 203K standard, 203K limited. We have our concierge desk flyer, our VA renovation flyer. All you have to do is, if you notice, each flyer is numbered. Okay, if you want to maximize it, take a look at it, kind of peruse it. And then just let me or your account executive know, hey, can you get flyer number 27 with my DigiCard on it? We don't promote us, we're going to promote you. So we're going to put your information right down here, and then you can give it to your realtors at open houses or anything like that. And by the way, I do renovation webinars probably twice a month. And if you ever want to know when the next one's coming, let me know. You can bring in your realtor partners, bring in your fellow loan officers, like bring them in. I would love to educate everyone. There's someone on this meeting. I promised I would do a one-on-one with you and your realtors, and I will, because that is what I'm willing to do to get the word out there. I want to educate as many people as possible, not on MLB's renovation product, just on renovation. Everyone seems so scared of the product. And after I do these webinars, people seem to be more open to it. Like, wow, I thought it would be a lot more work. You know, we do a lot of the work for you. And other lenders do it too. Again, I'm not here promoting MLB. This is promoting the product. It's an underutilized product. And I feel the borrowers can have so much more opportunity if they just know a little bit more about the products, renovation specifically.
Question I have, and it's,
Sure.
I'm very stupid, but there is no stupid questions, right?
Nope.
So long story short, on the 203K, is the 3.5% based upon the purchase price or based upon the total amount?
Very good question. Very good question. So what you're going to do is now, just as a side note, when it comes to renovation and purchase, that purchase contract that's being drawn up is not going to make mention to anything renovation related because it has nothing. The seller doesn't give two poops what the borrower is going to do. They just want to get their money. They're selling it for 300 grand. They want their 300 grand. So the sales contract says nothing about renovation, but you're going to take your purchase price of $300,000. You're going to take the repair costs, which is that little max mortgage worksheet blip where you add up all the renovation fees. So it's your bid, the inspection fees, title fees, contingency reserve. That's a big one. Add all of that up and take 96.5%.
Perfect. That's what I thought. I just wasn't I wasn't 100% on that one. I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. And on a refi, Robert, just to give clarity on that one as well, you're going to take your payoff. So the whole kit and caboodle payoff, all the repair costs, add it all up, take 97.75.
Beautiful.
Now, in the one-off chance that the appraisal comes in lower, which just like on any standard loan, it happens once in a while, you have to take the lesser of the two, the appraised value or this calculation.
No, I just tell them to forget about the pool.
Say that again?
Just tell them to forget about the.
Right. Just cut it down a little bit. So the appraisal, thank you, Kelly. So the appraisal is going to be done at any stage, just like a normal loan, because you're going to submit the loan with the bid. Most of the time, you're going to submit the loan with the bid, I should say. But you can't order the appraisal without the bid. The appraiser needs that bid. If you don't give that appraiser that bid, the appraiser is going to do an as-is appraisal report and is going to have no idea the borrower wants marble countertops and brand new wood floors and is going to put a whole deck on that. He doesn't know any of that. So you want to make sure when you order the appraisal, you're ordering it as a renovation and you provide the bid. I have seen it a number, and thank you for asking this question. It's a really good one. And I should have mentioned this. I've seen too many times where the broker or processor orders it as a 203B or doesn't give the bid. It gets done as a non-renovation loan, and then now we have to convert it. So what does that mean? It's going to the appraiser's got to go back out to the house. That's time. The appraiser is going to undoubtedly charge more money. So it's just, it's worth it to just double check renovation with the bid when you order. There's so many things I know I'm leaving stuff out because there's just so much to share about the product. So I'm leaving it up to you to ask the questions to refresh on it because I went through the PowerPoint and there's only so much you can get in those things. But there, like I mentioned, the ADU that's not in the PowerPoint. Okay. So here's something really a good gauge. Going back to Robert with the loan calculation. If you're like, I really just don't remember what the costs are. What are the repair costs? The inspection fees? I can't find the webinar that Andrea sent out. How do I do this? Take your bid amount. Okay, so let's say your bid is $100,000 and there's some utility repairs being done, which means you have a 15% contingency. If you know you have a 15% contingency, take 20% of that bid because that other 5% is going to account for the inspections, any permits, the title updates, or your supplemental origination. So so we're talking about how do you guesstimate what the repair costs are going to be. So if the bid is $100,000 and there's utilities included, so you have a 15% contingency, multiply that bid by 20%. So that would be $120,000. That's what you're going to add to your purchase price and take 96.5% of. If let's say there's no utilities involved and it's $100,000 of work, multiply that by 15%, right? Because your 10% contingency plus that 5% cushion for the rest of the repair costs. So 15% to guesstimate your total repairs. If there's no utilities involved, 20% to guesstimate your repair costs if the utilities are involved. And that will cover all the financeable fees to give you a nice estimate. And then when you submit the loan, the concierge desk is going to nail that down for you. Chip down everything, get the exact numbers for you. It's hard to say until the loan's submitted with the actual bid and the amount, because one or two of those fees are based on that amount. So it's hard. That's why I'm saying use that estimate, and you'll be more than covered, because it's not 5% for the other costs, but it'll give you a nice cushion. All right. If there's no other questions, again, my information is in the chat. My partner Ashley's information is in the chat. The HUD consultant link is in the chat. And just call. If you don't know your AE, or you do and you still want to call, just call me and let's go over some renovation. Let's get our borrowers into a renovation loan. I'm telling you, the realtors are going to love you for it, because the borrowers are going to be happy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Have a great and profitable week, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 2:30.
Thank you.